All right, this might be the first time I do an actually genuinely unedited video, so this is my real talking pace without any cuts in between. I've received a few messages from people, not directly messaging saying, hey, please go back to doing tutorials, but even just casually in other conversations with people saying, hey, I really liked, the old tutorials, and why don't you do the experimental stuff anymore? I like the new community stuff, but I kind of miss the old style of things. And also recently on the Blender subreddit, I saw a pretty popular post asking why Blender YouTube videos are becoming more clickbaity over time. And I do have a very specific perspective on this. And I have shared it before in other videos, but not just on a dedicated video. So imagine this is a response to someone saying to me, I wish you would go back to doing old tutorials. So what I would say, this is partially scripted, is yes, I agree. I liked doing the experimental tutorials in the past, but with the nature of the YouTube at this audience size, specific tutorials guarantee a loss of subscribers, which is something that I don't really want to have to think about from the artistic perspective, right? Because it's very shallow, but it is an annoying thing. And like I said, it's something I shouldn't have to worry about. The reasoning that specific tutorials guarantee a loss of subscribers is, in my mind, because of the following. When you're a small YouTuber, every new tutorial you make guarantees an increase in the audience. Pretty much. If they're a good quality, if they're shared in the right place, put it on Twitter, put it on Blender Nation, etc., all the regular stuff. Because when you start from zero, you can only go up. You can't go into negative followers. God, imagine that. Wouldn't that be weird? A follower debt. But no, you put out a tutorial, it has value because we know the educational value about anything is greater than zero, right? So you're bound to raise an audience. But newcomers each have specific interests. So if you put out more and more tutorials, you're going to be accumulating more and more individuals with specific interests. And that's going to look fine for a while because the pace of new people coming in and seeing those new tutorials is greater than the pace of people that will leave the channel. Everything is still fresh, everything looks good, and that growth is beneficial. You look at it and you go, wow, I could do this forever, that's great. But I think there's a tipping point, and some people might disagree with me on this, but I'm pretty sure this is what happens. As the audience grows large for a Blender YouTuber, the likelihood that the majority of their audience being interested in a specific tutorial decreases, if that makes sense. So the larger the audience grows, the smaller the portion of the audience that is interested in a new tutorial. Okay, the grammar was completely wrong in what I said, but hopefully this makes sense because it's a difficult thing to describe. So if you keep making hyper-specific tutorials, like I did this specific thing, and your audience is 50,000, 100,000, 150, 200,000, 0.0001% of people will be interested in doing that specific thing unless there's an overriding quality. For example, the presentation style of your content is humorous or entertaining, or you've built up a community culture where people are curious in seeing how you specifically would do something, even if they're not interested in that content. But the larger you grow, the smaller the portion in terms of a percentage of your audience is interested in clicking on that video. Now, why is that relevant to clickbait? Because on YouTube, as far as I know, and this might kind of be breaching into conspiracy territory, the more of your original audience that click on a new video, the higher the likelihood of your content being recommended on the platform, like on the home feed. So you want a higher percentage of people in your audience to click on a video. But if, as you've been growing larger, a smaller and smaller percentage of your audience are interested in your new tutorials, the less likely you are to be recommended. So that means that what happens over time is tutorial creators end up killing the channels because they keep making specific tutorials which are not generalized because of the increasing specific interest of every individual of the large mass of the audience, which means that there are no more recommendations going out, which means that the people that would derive value from those tutorials aren't even finding the tutorials, which means that, it's kind of pointless. So you end up with a loss of subscribers because the pace of new people finding those videos isn't there anymore, because the original audience didn't click on that video, so it's not being recommended to new people. So there's no good flow of new people coming into that tutorial. Therefore, the only people clicking on the tutorial are previous audience members that happened to click on it, that weren't interested in it, and then left. So what you end up with is a large tutorial creator putting out specific tutorials, losing subscribers. And at that point, what's the point? So I think, to me anyway, that's why larger Blender YouTubers become more clickbaity and generalized over time, including myself, even though I keep experimenting with different types of content. It's because the more specific you are, the less relevant or appropriate it is for a large audience. So the only way to continue growing, or even to continue getting your content seen by new people, is to generalize. And the fastest way to generalize, especially for those of us with very low creativity, is to go for clickbaity content. So obviously, there are trends that go along with that. How to make money with Blender for the X time, or you'll never believe this new feature, without, going into much detail, all that kind of thing. And it's an unfortunate thing that as an artist you shouldn't have to think about. But I do believe it's because of this tipping point somewhere in the audience size where eventually the flow of newcomers to a video can't outpace the flow of people leaving, just because of this recommendation quirk. So yes, that's why I personally have just set up the new YouTube membership system along with the private server that we call the network, codassault.online/network. I figure that if I have a lane to place every type of content rather than trying to shove it all into one lane, being the main YouTube channel, that way they can all generate value without overlapping onto each other and possibly hurting the visibility of the other types of content. And that because of that, maybe I would be better equipped to not let the performance anxiety of YouTube prevent that content from existing in the first place. And that's the 2024 experiment. It's effectively, if we have a place for every type of content without worrying about it inhibiting other content, then maybe that would prevent the anxiety and therefore prevent that stuff from being killed in its crib, effectively. So maybe some people will agree with that, maybe some will disagree, but I think that's kind of my philosophy on why Blender YouTube space has become more clickbaity. That's because there's this tipping point in audience size, and the flow of new people can't outpace the flow of people leaving. And therefore, there is no reason to create specific tutorials with high value, long videos, etc. anymore, because they do inevitably kill the channel, unless, again, you have these overriding factors, personality, curiosity, or just exceptional high value, or alternatively, falling through an algorithmic crack, which does happen to people, where a regular video put out on a specific time of a specific day falls into an algorithmic crack and then gets recommended in this weird cyclic loop where it just keeps on going and growing and growing and growing. YouTuber looks at that and thinks, okay, what did I do differently to create this effect? The real reason it got picked up isn't just because they made something high value, it's because they got lucky. If that video was posted the day before or the day after, it wouldn't have blown up. That's kind of a harsh perspective on my end, maybe. There are a couple of factors in there. The video is high quality, but at the same time, sometimes you just luck out. And I personally think that happened with one of my videos, the LiDAR one. But yes, that's my perspective on it. It's an unfortunate thing, but that's just kind of how it is. And it does annoy me because I really want that content to exist. The old tutorials, the old experimental stuff. So that's my 2024 experiment coming up. Just make everything you want. Do not suppress the creativity. That's kind of going back to what I said about being a Dyson sphere for your own star of creativity, if that makes sense. Rather than trying to control things, let it happen. Let the creativity happen. Let the creation happen. You shouldn't suppress what you want to make just because it may not be appropriate for a certain platform. Just find another place to put it where people can find it so they can get the value. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there. Hope it doesn't get me in trouble.